Flagstaff Hill Maritime Village. An obvious name really, given that it's been built on the side of a hill where the flagpole is. It's a state heritage listed site and it overlooks Lady Bay. The modern main building at the top of the hill houses a large gift shop, a restaurant and the Warrnambool Visitor Information Centre. You enter at this point and start your tour into the museum, which is downstairs in the same building. The museum is chock full of information. It is Victoria's largest publicly accessible shipwreck artefact collection and contains plenty of weird stories, like the sailing ship that went down in 1891 with a cargo of 260 cases of dynamite and 400 German pianos. Or the story of the Loch Ard, a ship that sank during a violent storm in 1878. On board was a Minton porcelain peacock, one of only 9 in the world apparently. It survived and is allegedly Australia's most valuable shipwreck artefact, recently just been insured for about $4 million. It's now the centrepiece of the museum collection, along with the 1814 McCabe gold watch, commonly known as the Carmichael watch, which is another story in itself really. Now the village is normally a living historical 19th century port and town, with volunteers dressed in period costume, manning the shops and wandering around. But I slipped in on a weekday during the off-season when the whole place was exceptionally quiet. The village has got over 40 buildings and vessels and spreads over 10 hectares. Businesses on display include Ship's Chandlers. These were the guys who specialised in selling everything a ship and its crew required. It's sort of like a one-stop shop that saved time and effort during a ship's short stay in port. And check out this shed full of safety and rescue equipment. Have a look at the old original ship's flare right in the middle there. And here's the old baker's cart, which may remind a few people of the days when milk and bread was actually delivered to your home. And here's the bond store, which is normally it's a building or a secured area in which dutiable goods can be stored, manipulated or undergo manufacturing and without payment of duty. This is a system that exists in developed countries all around the world. And here's the shipsmith. Sounds a bit strange when you say it, really. Anyway, a shipsmith is just a blacksmith who obviously specialises more in creating and fixing metal items for ships. The Steam Packet Inn. Every town has to have a pub, and this is the pub for this town. The shipping agent is just a designated person or agency held responsible for handling shipments and cargo and the general interest of its customers. The boat builder and shipwright is pretty much the person who constructs, fits out, commissions and repairs all things that float, like boats and ships. The sailmaker? Well, it's self-explanatory really. They make sails, along with wire rope and rigging. They also make all the flags, which were widely used by old sailing craft for demarcation and communications. A candle maker. That's someone who's dedicated to proving the old adage that you can't make your candle brighter by blowing anybody else's candle out. The cooper. It's just an occupational name for a person who is a cask or barrel maker, or person that sells them. The cemetery, normally full of dead people and flowers. Fortunately, this one is just way more full of flowers. Well, here's the church and the vicarage, and good to see nothing changes. Hard seats, pin drop acoustics, and brightly coloured windows. And for those that believe in other gambles, there are options behind the church. Here's the jail. Damn small it was back in those days, and lacking the colour TVs, internet service, good food and medical services that we've come to expect of our modern day internment. The library and the chart room. There's plenty of interesting charts and things in here, and there's an excellent selection of books, including ones like A Tale of Two Cities by Charles Dickens, and they all look quite original too, not copies. The tea rooms. Bit of a pity because it was closed when I was there, because what was upsetting is that by all reports, when it's normally open, the assorted scones, cakes, etc. make afternoon tea a real treat. Now, here's a bunch of volunteers who clearly didn't know it was a gazetted day off, all waddling down in formation, cleverly disguised as ducks. Public toilets. Everybody wants to know where they are. Now, they might be modern day flushing toilets, but the building style is certainly in keeping with the period. The school was a real surprise. I mean, more hard seats and desks, but they had this on-screen movie running which showed you how the lessons were taught in days of old, and it sort of sucks you in to see how it pans out, and if you get the answers correct. Bank of Australia. Well worth visiting, as possibly the only bank that hasn't been involved in some sort of inquiry or royal commission. The fire station. Everybody loves a visit to the fire station, and this one is certainly no exception. The newspaper and the general printer. The Examiner, where you could see a great assortment of old and wonderful printing gear. And like everywhere else in the complex, there's plenty of information to read in here. The Clock and Instrument Maker and Repairer. This place was where you bought everything that was of a finely crafted mechanical nature. Clocks, compasses, sextants, binoculars, telescopes, timers, thermometers, etc., etc. In fact, we think we saw a few etceteras on one of the shelves there. The Leadlight Emporium. Lead lighting, a rare craft that became a slight craze in the late 70s with bored housewives who had moved on from Tupperware parties. The Dressmaker, where you can get bonnets, dresses, corsetry and the latest creations, plus an old Singer sewing machine, which to most Aussies is more recognisable than a Model T Ford. And to the Doctor, whose house is right at the top of town, well away from the rough area down by the docks. The consulting and operating room is in the front room of his house. The rest of his home is quite comfortable, including his own shingle-roofed outdoor dunny. The Lighthouse. There are two of them in the complex. One has been upgraded and is still in operation as a lighthouse. The Lighthouse Attendants' Home. Another very substantial and comfortable house, with a good selection of ancillary pieces of equipment strewn about the place. Plus, as if to upset the Doctor, an even more impressive outdoor dunny. Warrnambool Garrison. Apparently, in 1887, the colony feared a Russian invasion. Politicians kept chanting, "Weapons of mass destruction," so a fort was constructed near the lighthouse. They put in 2 rare muzzle-loading cannons with a range of about 5.5 kilometres. Clearly, the people thought that a bunch of Russian tourists might paddle halfway around the world in their best kayaks to swamp the newly developed Warrnambool tourism industry with unwanted Russian rubles. I was actually informed that the fort is opened 1 day per month and the cannons are fired, possibly as a continued reminder to any other potential unwelcome tourists. Look, in closing, I'm not going to crap on about how easy it is to get around this place. The museum is no problem, but as you've seen, the village area is a bit hilly, and the cobblestones make it difficult going for those who are a tad frail in the walking department. But don't let that put you off. Just call the office. I feel pretty certain they'll be able to advise all the different options available to help get you around. And do go and have a look at the whole joint because it's really well worth the effort.